Hey, everybody. I've got a pretty deep, thought-provoking topic for today. It's bullying. And this isn't just about kids picking on each other, okay? Not the random playground stuff that we all grew up with and got through. I'm talking about when that that bullying gets vicious to the point that a child thinks they've got no option other than possibly suicide. So it's super serious and a topic that I think is really worth drilling down on and understanding. And today my guest is Kirk Smalley, and he's the founder of Stand for the Silent. And we're going to be talking about bullying and suicide of children, and which personally I think is the saddest thing I can possibly think of, that despair. And so let's just get into it. Thank you, Kirk, for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Diane.
So let's talk about, you run an organization, Stand for the Silent. Where'd that come from?
Well, back in 2010, on May 13th, my wife Laura and I lost our 11-year-old son, Ty, to suicide because he was being bullied for over 2 years in school, and nobody really ever made it stop. You know, Laura worked at the school that Ty went to, and she was in the office almost every day trying to get him to get this group of kids to leave him alone. She got the standard answers. You know, boys will be boys, kids will be kids. Bullying's just a rite of childhood passage. It's something we all have to go through. 5,683 days ago, Ty was sitting in the gym with his best friend. They were just waiting on class to start. And this kid that had been picking on him came up and started messing with him again. And for the first time in his life, Ty fought back. Kid walked up and pushed him, and Ty turned around and shoved him back. And Diane, it's always the second guy that gets caught, you know? You know, the disturbance draws the teacher's eye, and they look over and they see the second guy take the swing. And that's what happened to Ty. He got sent to the office. They called his mama. He got suspended for 3 days. She went and picked him up and brought him home, and she had to go back to work. They were short-handed that day. So she told Ty to do his homework, do his chores, and told him that we were going to talk about it when we got home that evening. My wife came home at 2:38 p.m. on May 13th, and she found out that Ty didn't do his homework. He hadn't done any of his chores. Instead, my boy had killed himself on my bedroom floor. I got a phone call that day at 2:39. I answered caller ID, said it was Laura, and she was screaming. I tried to get her calmed down enough to tell me what was going on, and finally, I guess I screamed back at her, and I said, "Baby, you got to stop. You got to tell me what's happening." And she managed to say, "He's dead. He shot himself." I actually asked her, "Who?" And she said, "Ty." Ever since that day, you know, I've pretty much traveled all over this country, all over this world, talking to families of kids that have done that same kind of thing. You know, we did a lot of research after Ty died, and found out that this kind of thing was happening more than people realize. I actually have a list now of over 68,000 children that we have lost in America. to suicide because of bullying in the last 7.5 years. That comes out to almost 23 kids a day, almost a child an hour.
Oh my
And
God.
Laura and I decided that we didn't want to live in a world like that. We had a group of high school kids in Oklahoma City that heard about what happened to Ty, and they decided they didn't want to live in a world like that either. And so they created a Facebook group called Stand for the Silent. We got in touch with their director, and she invited me to come and speak to the kids. There were 68 of them, and so I went and met with them, and we decided we had to do something to keep this from happening to another child, to another baby, another family. And that's pretty much how Stand for the Silent was born. We started traveling around, speaking at schools. They invite us. We don't cold call and ask them if we can come. To date, I've been to a little over 6,800 schools. I've talked to a little over 4.5 million kids. We have chapters of Stand for the Silent in schools and communities in 40 states and 18 countries. Right now I'm booked through about mid-May. We're booking into next fall already. It's a very needed thing.
Mhm.
Uh, Schools contact us by the dozens and want us to come and help them get a message to their students and help make what happened to Ty stop and let kids know that there are very serious consequences. It's not just words, it's not just a post on Facebook or Snapchat. It's deadly. It kills kids. It killed mine. Cyberbullying has increased over 75% since the pandemic started. Kids are being atrocious to each other online. Most parents, myself included, don't realize the impact that social media has on our children. We grew up without it.
Mhm.
And most of them don't realize that there are ways to fight against it if their kids being bullied online. We leave a lot of resources with schools when we go and visit for not only the school and students and staff, but also for parents. I leave flyers on various companies and organizations that have bullying and suicide resources. The cyberbullying. We leave a flyer called. It's about a company called Bark, and
What is it called?
Bark, BARK, like a dog bark,
Uh-huh.
and they actually have an app that parents can install on their kid's cellular device, and it will monitor their social media presence. It will send alerts to mom and dad if their kid's being bullied on Facebook. What I like about Bark is it also sends an alert to mom and dad if their kid's being the bully.
Mhm.
We've all heard, well, Timmy would never do such a thing. Timmy's an angel. But Timmy just told Sally on Facebook, you're worthless and nobody likes you and you should just kill yourself.
Mhm.
And so when mom and dad see that with their own eyes, maybe they'll do something about it. There's several other ones out there monitoring the apps. There's one called TeenSafe. I actually like Bark better because it monitors more of the social media platforms than most of the other ones do. Um, we opened up another website. Our main website is standforthesilent.org, and we opened up another one a couple of years ago. It's called socialbullets.org, and it
Called
deals
what? What is
social
that?
bullets,
Social bullets?
social socialbullets.org, and I thought I had a flyer right here. It
I'll
deals,
find it.
yeah, it deals strictly with cyberbullying.
Mm-hmm.
We had a large marketing company called Area 23. They're worldwide. They do large campaigns for like Toyota and stuff. And they donated $500,000 worth of work to this project. They developed an algorithm that tracked cyberbullying across all the social media platforms for a 24-hour period. And we found out that every 238 times that a child was cyberbullied, one of them tried to take their own life. And that number is unacceptable. So they had their artists draw 4 different posters depicting 4 different types of cyberbullying: age shaming, race shaming, body shaming, and sexual orientation. We took a group of high school kids and their parents, and in a large auditorium on a big screen, we started that algorithm, and they would see the posts pop up from Facebook or Snapchat. Bill told John, "You're ugly, nobody likes you, you're stupid, you're fat, you're dumb, you should die." Every time we hit the number 238, we fired a live bullet at one of those posters at a shooting range. Well, we caught the reaction of the kids and the parents to the posts popping up on video, and we caught their reaction to the bullets firing and hitting the targets. And then we interviewed them afterwards and got their take on on how this impacted them. What they learned from it, what they felt. Um, couldn't very well define the problem without having a solution for it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we developed a guide based on uh, cyberbullying that told people what to do if they were being cyberbullied online, on social media. It's downloadable. It's free for anyone that wants it. Um, you know, you screenshot everything.
Mm-hmm.
Most platforms have a way to report that type of thing as well. So you report it, you screenshot the report, you screenshot the posts, you document everything. That's evidence. You know, there are ways to fight against this and make it stop. Cyberbullying is probably increased and is more prevalent than most physical type of bullying and verbal type of bullying in schools now, because kids feel protected. They're anonymous. They can build a fake Facebook account and
Mm-hmm.
they can post. I can take a picture of you walking down the hallway or in the gym locker room, and I can Photoshop it. Now we have AI. I can make it look like you're doing anything I want you to do, and I
Mm-hmm.
can post it anonymously online. And if I get to feeling bad about it and think maybe I shouldn't have done that, I can delete it. But Diane, it never truly goes away.
Mm-hmm.
It's out there. Someone's seen it. Someone shared it. Someone saved it. Those are the type of things that we try and instill in the kids that we speak to, students that we speak to. Let them learn the impact that their words and their actions have. Some of the statistics in our world are really staggering. 1 out of 4 of our kids in America right now actually has a plan on how they would take their own life before they graduate from high school. 25% of our babies. My boy's school had 1,400 kids in the district. That comes out to 350 babies in one school that would actually have a plan on how to kill themselves before they graduate from high school. That list of 68,000 kids I mentioned.
Why do you think that is, Kirk? Do you think it's that they all feel bullied? Is it the comparisons on social media? Is it just plain peer pressure? Like, what would cause a child to be thinking about that?
I personally believe it's just the stress and the pressure that we have put kids under with the advent of technology. You know, kids are learning more and more at younger and younger ages.
Hmm.
That list I told you about, the 68,000 kids I knew about that had taken their own lives, the youngest one on it was 6 years old, Diane.
Oh my God.
Suicide has always been a very taboo subject. You know, people don't want to talk about it. They're afraid that if we talk about it, it will cause it to happen. And
Hmm.
that's the farthest thing from the truth there is. Most of those 1 in 4 kids that have that plan, they think that they're all alone in this. They think that they're the only ones that have ever had these thoughts.
Yeah.
Nobody gets it. Nobody understands. Nobody's ever been through this before but me. They don't realize that 1 out of 4 of their own classmates have those same ideas and same thoughts. And so we have to learn to talk about it with them.
Hmm.
We have to learn to teach them that we can talk it out. We don't have to act it out. And that's the only way in this world that we're ever going to stop it from happening. Suicide has become the second leading cause of death in our young people in America, ages 10 to 24 years old.
Yeah, I saw that on your website. I was shocked.
We have to learn to talk about it. You know, I did a presentation, oh God, it's been 11, 12 years ago at Oklahoma Health Academy. And I got a email from a lady afterwards that said she wanted to thank me. She said, I went home after hearing what you speak. She said, I'm a mother. And she said, I spoke to my 2 teenage boys and I asked them the hardest question I had ever asked them in my life. I asked them if they had ever thought of suicide and did they have a plan. And she said, I was truly shocked by their answers. My 13-year-old said, yeah, he had thought about it, but he didn't actually have a plan. And she said, my 16-year-old said he'd thought about it many times and had several plans. She said most of them involved hanging himself. And she said her husband and her had both grown up poor, and they had strived to give their kids everything that they hadn't had growing up. And sometimes they were tired when they got home from work, and their kids tried to talk to them, and not now, I'm busy, I'm tired, we'll talk later type thing. And she said, I realized that we had to work more on our communication skills and spend more time together as a family. She said, after we had our discussion, she said, my son had the brightest smile I'd seen in years. And she said he went to his room, and about 5 minutes later, he came back and he gave me the most precious gift I'd ever received. He gave me the rope that he was planning to hang himself with. He'd been hiding it under his bed for over 6 months. We have to learn to discuss things like this with our children and ask the hard questions. You know, when I do like an evening presentation for communities and parents, and I ask them, how many of you ask your kid every day when they come home from school, how was your day? Boy, the hands go up by the hundreds. And what do they say? It was
Fine.
it was good, it was fine. And then what? Well, then they go to their room and they get on their computer or laptop or whatever, you know. That's not communicating with our kids.
Hmm.
They say my day was fine because they don't really think that, you know, they want to get into that discussion. And
Hmm.
so as parents, we have to lead them into that discussion. And we can't accept my day was good, my day was fine as an answer. We have to ask other questions. What good thing happened to you today? What bad thing happened to you today? You know, let's talk. You
Hmm.
know, I was sitting at a restaurant night before last, I was staying in a hotel because I had presentations the next morning and afternoon. And I was sitting in a restaurant and I watched a family of four, a mom, a dad, and two kids. And every single one of them was sitting there like this. Just,
Mm.
they weren't even discussing things.
Yeah.
We talk as a family. We don't have dinner around a dinner table as a family anymore. The internet, media are raising our children.
Mm-hmm.
They grow up watching cartoons like South Park, where Kenny dies in every episode and he comes back tomorrow. What did that just teach our children?
Right.
Death ain't real. Life's cheap. We get to come
Mm-hmm.
back tomorrow. They play video games where they get points for killing people. Like that's a good thing. They're numb to violence. They see it on all kinds of apps and social media apps and every movie and television show. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we have to learn to communicate with our children again and have meaningful discussions with them. One of the things that we try to teach every child, we give them one of our wristbands that says, I am somebody on it. These glow in the dark, and the kids really like those. And I've had kids that wear them daily for 10 years and it finally breaks and they message me on social media or email me and they say, hey, I can't live without that. Can I get another one? Yeah, you can. And I'll send them a handful. Um, but that's important that they realize that they are somebody
Mm-hmm.
and that somebody cares about them, even an old man that they don't even hardly know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's kind of what we do and why we do what we do.
How do kids respond during your presentations?
We warn the schools that they're going to have a lot of kids in tears.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, a lot of the kids have lost somebody or know someone in their family or in their life that they cared about that has taken their own lives now because suicide is so prevalent in our society. And so it does impact them very, very strongly. We recommend during our presentation that the school counselor may bring in some extra therapists or counselors from the community. Um, you know, some of the kids get overwhelmed. They need a few minutes to collect themselves. They get up, they quietly go over, and the counselors talk to them. I have had kids that actually have told the counselor while I'm still speaking, I was going to do that tonight. I was going to kill myself this evening. And we've had children that, the counselor would call the parents and they take them and get them help immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I get messages by the thousands. I have a email folder called suicide messages that are kids that say, I was going to kill myself until I heard you speak, and now I'm not, and I want to help you make it stop, Mr. Smalley. And I could break your heart with 10,000 messages that say that. Um, knowing that we have that type of an impact and that we can save even one baby from doing what Ty did, that's worth everything I have to give and do. I lost my wife Laura 1,946 days ago, November
Mm-hmm.
14th, 2020. I watched for 10 years before she died her pine and grieve and miss my boy. I know the impact this has on families. I've talked to way too many of them that have lost children to this. We went to Australia 15, 14, 13 years ago and did several presentations there. We met a family called the DeVries, and they've become really close with me, and they were close with Laura. They're actually coming to the States here sometime in 26 to go with me and do some more presentations. They started the Australian chapter of Stand for the Silent over there. They lost 14-year-old daughter, Brianna. She was being bullied on MySpace and Facebook by some of her own trusted friends. And one day she had enough. It's seeing the impact that it has had on other families. Montana Lance, he was 9 years old, took his own life um, because he was being bullied in school for over a year. He retaliated against the bully, and he's the one that got in trouble. He was sitting in the office waiting on his mom, Debbie, and his daddy, Jason, to come and pick him up and take him home and ask if he could go to the restroom. And they let him go in the nurse's bathroom, the only one in school that had a lock on the door. And 9-year-old Montana Lance took off his own belt and hung himself in the nurse's bathroom. Our actions have consequences, and they are deadly. You know, I got a buddy of mine. His name is Matt, and man, I love Matt. Matt's my friend. Matt loves me. But see, Matt's always had this little habit. You know, he always seemed to be calling people nicknames. You know, I guess maybe he thought they were funny. Maybe he thought they were cute. Matt's nickname for me was worthless. And you know, Matt really truly didn't think that I was worthless. It's just something he said. You know, he'd call me on the phone. He'd say, "Hey, worthless, what are you doing?" And one day, not very long ago, I was feeling really, really worthless. And Matt called. You know, no big deal, right? It's just a word, ain't it?
Mhm.
One word. Matt doesn't call people nicknames anymore. He learned that day what one word can do to somebody if it catches them wrong, you know? We have to start teaching our kids empathy. You know, the day after Ty killed himself, they were actually telling jokes about it at his school. Why would they do that? Why would they do that? My boy's best friend's name was Trey. Trey got the living daylights pounded out of him because he heard those jokes, Diane. He went up and tried to defend my kid. My baby's mama had to hear those jokes. I hope everybody listening to this that has children puts themselves in that position to where they have to hear a joke about their own baby taking their own life. And if it impacts you the way it impacts me, then by God, maybe it's time you talk to your kid. We've got a lot of changes in this world. You know, bullying is all around us. It's in our workplaces, it's in our homes, it's in our professional sports, it's in our politics. It's everywhere we look. Yeah, kids are going to learn that behavior.
Mhm.
And it's time we start speaking out against it when we see it happen. we teach our kids to speak out against it when they see it happen. You know, it's a proven fact that 96% of the time bullying stops within 10 seconds if one person will speak out. Now, that doesn't mean that the same kid ain't going to be bullied tomorrow by the same kid again, but it stops now, this time, within 10 seconds. You know, far too often, some kids getting beat down out behind the gym after school, and all the other kids are sitting there filming that. They want to post it on social media and become Facebook famous for 5 minutes, you know. But if we can teach them to speak up and say, hey, leave him alone. There are more bystanders than there are bullies and victims.
Mm-hmm.
There is power in numbers, and there is power in the use of your voice. We've got a lot of work to do in this world. When we see our politicians bullying each other, you know, we need to shoot those emails, write those letters, make those phone calls. Hey, that's unacceptable. Quit.
Mm-hmm.
Teaching my kids bad habits, and I don't appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just let it go anymore. We keep ignoring it, we're going to keep losing babies. And Diane, you could have come up to me 5,684 days ago and you could have told me, Kirk, your son is fixing to kill himself because he's being bullied. I would have laughed at you.
Mm-hmm.
I would have called you a liar. There is no way on this earth that I would have believed a word of that. No way. And if you don't think what happened to my kid can happen to your kid, you're wrong. We never know what somebody else is truly going through. Trust me.
That's very true.
Ty never indicated that he had ever thought, my God, we'd have locked him in a padded room if we'd have had any inclination that he was going to take his own life. Whatever we had to do, we never know.
You don't know because, I mean, you really don't, because children particularly don't understand finality, and they're in that emotion in the moment, and they don't understand that that emotion can drift away and be a whole different emotion the next day. It's that so in the moment, wrapped in emotions, that is incredibly painful for them, and certainly anyone who is the survivors around it, and the family and the loved ones. I mean, that level of pain is beyond comprehension.
Yes, ma'am. You know, kids think, well, I was only joking. I was only teasing. I didn't really mean it. But what if that child that they were teasing or joking to had been teased and joked by 10 other kids about the same thing that day?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've often been asked, what is your definition of bullying? And I think it's time we take the power away from the bully and give it to the victim. And so my definition of bullying is, if I think you're bullying me, then you're a bully.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though you say I was only teasing, I was only joking, how did I take it?
Mm-hmm. That's a great flip on it. Yeah.
I don't know.
What can schools do, since schools spend so much time with kids? What would you tell teachers or administrators in the school to watch for, to tune in on?
You know, most of the time, our school teachers and administrators, they're very, very busy. I get it. I understand. Nowadays there's so many state tests, federal tests that they have to administer. That even the counselors are most of the time tasked with that kind of thing. Administering those tests. They don't even have time to counsel kids anymore. Um, Awareness is key.
Mhm.
First of all, we keep raising awareness on a daily basis in front of kids, because it's hard to pound in there sometimes, when they're young, they're forgetful. Well, I was just joking. Well, that person didn't take it as a joke, they
Mhm.
took it serious. When bullying is reported, we need to start acting on that. We need to do something about it. We don't need to hear boys will be boys, kids will be kids. Bullying is just a rite of childhood passage. We need to act on it. We need to contact parents. We need to have those discussions and tell them, this is unacceptable. Most schools have student handbooks, and there is usually something in the student handbook about bullying, and the consequences thereof. They need to follow through with that kind of thing. I've had a lot of people tell me, well, we need laws to back up, parents that have kids being bullied. Well, we got laws about a little bit of everything. We got laws against robbing banks, and banks still get
Mhm.
robbed. And so I don't know that a federal law is going to solve this problem.
Mhm.
What is going to solve this is parents getting involved in their children's lives.
Mhm.
I've had parents say, well, I've gone to the school 100 times, and I walk into the office and I tell the principal, by God, you need to do something about this. My kid's getting bullied every single damn day here. And, first thing I tell them is that's the wrong approach. When you go into the principal's office or the assistant principal's administrator's office and you are loaded for bear, and believe me, I get it. You want to protect your child, but you go in and you start this, they throw up that defense, that wall, and you get zero from them at that point. Instead, we approach and we say, how can we work together to solve this problem? Because we both know what's happening. It's been reported several times. What can we do as a team to solve this?
Mhm.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It's really hard because I know you want to protect your child, but you got to take the right steps. You know, you don't get any activity out of the counselor, the principal, the superintendent. You go to the school board. You don't get any help there. You can go to the State Department of Education. You don't get any help there. You go to the Federal Department of Education. You don't get any help there. You can actually go to the Department of Justice, the Federal Department of Justice. There's a lady there that I've worked with several times that uses old, archaic laws that are on the books about human rights and interprets them in a way that she can approach a school and say, look, this is what this says, and you need to solve this problem. And she's been very successful doing it, you know? So it's all about awareness,
Mhm.
not only with bullying, but also with suicide. We have to keep raising awareness. We have to have those tough conversations. You know, we got to talk to our kids.
And with kids that often think they should be able to handle something, don't want to, be another burden in their busy parents' life. Kids interpret things in so many, it's as unique as a child is, it's the unique different ways they'll interpret. Um, what would you say to a child who's being bullied?
First and foremost, I'd let them know that they are somebody.
Mhm.
You have a right to be here. You have a right to be exactly who you are. You know, bullies tend to bully people about things that they are lacking in, or things that they are, I don't know what word I'm looking for. Uh, you know,
Their own weakness. There's definitely a sense of I can be bigger if I can make someone smaller.
exactly. You know, bullies tend to be raised by bullies.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which is also where the trickiest part is of going to schools. And then schools already have a good idea that the parent they're going to call about their bullying child is going to be the bullying parent
I've had
or
a
the parent in denial.
I've done a lot of presentations for the Native American communities. I've spoken at a lot of different reservations and different Indian tribe schools and stuff, and they have what I call generational bullying. You know, grandma and grandpa bullied this family, and so mom and dad grew up bullying that
Mm.
same family, and so you know it's my job to do the same. And if we can break that cycle for one generation, you think of all the lives that we can impact over the course of time. You know, I see. I have a theory. I call it my kick the dog theory, not based on any scientific facts or anything. But you know, I go to work and my boss is basically bullying me, and so I come home and I take that out on the wife and kid. And then the kid, he walks outside and he kicks the dog because that's the lowest thing on the food chain there, you know.
That's a great example. And you remind me of my favorite children's book was called Because Brian Hugged His Mother. And in the morning, Brian's getting ready to go to school and he hugs his mother. And his mother goes out, had been in a bad mood, but she got a hug from Brian. And then she goes out and she's driving to work and someone's going really slow and annoying her. She's late, but she lets them go in front of them and they give her a wave. And then that person, says hi to the policeman at the corner, and it just goes on and on the chain of that hug in a positive way.
Yeah. You
But
know,
yeah, because it does work both ways.
it does. And, you know, that's another thing that we teach the kids that we talk to. We teach them a hand sign.
Yeah.
The American Sign Language symbol, it means I love you. And when we leave schools, the kids are throwing that left and right, and it's sustainable. I mean, they do it for years. They teach.
Yeah.
We take a lot of children's books to leave as resources with all the schools we go to, especially the high schools. I've got one in particular that I really like. It's called We're All Different, but We're All Kitty Cats. And it's about a cat named Carlos who's bullied by a cat named Vinny because Carlos doesn't have any fur. And by the
Mhm.
end of the book, Vinny finds out, I don't have to be that way.
Yeah.
And we try to get the high school kids to take those books down to the little ones in their community because the high school kids are the local heroes. If they start wearing Nike tennis shoes, all the middle school kids are going to have Nike tennis shoes on tomorrow. And then the elementary kids are going to have them on. They want to be like them. They want to
Yeah.
emulate them, say what they say, do what they do, wear what they wear. They want to be them. Because all their life they've heard you, me, teachers, principals say, play nice, be good, and it goes in one ear and out the other. But when their local hero says, hey, dude, you don't have to be that way,
Mm-hmm.
they take that message to heart and they listen. We had a group of high school kids out in Yuba City, California, took that book around to 17 elementary schools, read the story to the kids, and then had a talk with them about it. What could this other kitty cat have done to let Carlos know, hey, you're different? We all are. It's a good thing. What could this guy have told Carlos, dude, that ain't cool the way you're treating him? They got done reading that book to all those schools and they decided that wasn't enough. And so they went back and they developed a play based on the book. And they went back to the same schools a couple months later, dressed up as the kitty cats, and performed that play just to reinforce that message. Those are the kind of things that our schools can do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, get your local high school quarterback hero to go down and read those things to the little ones and talk to them about it. And they listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it also keeps the older kids involved and they learn, you know, I can make a difference in this world. I can change this.
Mm-hmm.
You and I can't do it. Principal can't do it. Counselor can't do it. A school teacher can't do it. But the kids themselves can. And they're the only ones that can.
It reminded me of another favorite book of mine, which was, I think it was by Carson Daly, and it's called You're Different and That's Super. And it's about a horse that is born with a bunch of horses, and everyone in the stable's picking on the horse because he looks a little different because he gets a bump in the middle of his head. Well, he ends up, the bump starts to grow and grow and grow. And then one day there's a fire in the barn, and the only person who can get the latch up is because he's got this huge horn, because he's really a unicorn, not a horse.
Yeah. We've got one called the Bullied Unicorn that we give to the schools as well. It's similar to that. So, there's just so many different ways that we can help spread this message and teach our kids. We actually have in fact, I got a flyer laying right here. We started a student standout program, and school teachers or any of the school staff can actually go on our website and nominate students for being a good guy. We want to teach them that being kind or doing random acts of kindness or just helping others actually pays off. And so once a week, we go through the nominees and we draw from a hat. And the winner gets a $50 Stand for the Silent Visa gift card. They get a shirt that only they have, a box of swag. And then at the end of each semester, we draw from all the winners and they get a $100 gift card and more goodies, that kind of thing. And it's been pretty successful, teaching kids that, hey, it doesn't hurt me to help someone else.
What a great program. Well, there's going to be links to that as well as your whole website at the end of this, because Kirk, wow, I mean,
we give out scholarships to kids. After Laura passed away, we started a scholarship program twice a year on March 1st and October 1st. We give out $4,000 or $5,000 scholarships. We take 50 completed applicants and then we shut it off. So on March 1st, you have to at least be a high school senior. You can already be in college as well. It's good for not only colleges and universities, it's good for trade and tech schools as well. My world needs air conditioning techs. My world needs plumbers. We want to help kids further their education in honor of Laura and Ty. And so, that's something that another one of our programs that we've developed and try to get out there. We normally do in the summertime, right before school starts, we do back to school backpacks filled with school supplies for kids that, are unfortunate and their parents need help with their school supplies, and we give those away by the thousands. I've paid off a lot of unpaid lunches for students. A lot of times kids are bullied because mom and dad didn't pay their lunch bill, and the school still lets them eat, but they get like a peanut butter sandwich, and everybody knows that if you're eating that peanut butter sandwich, your mom and dad are poor. They didn't pay your lunch account. Not on my watch, hon. Not happening. We just try to help any way we can.
Kirk, this time went too fast, which I had a feeling it would. I've been speaking with Kirk Smalley, who founded, along with his wife, Stand for the Silent. And there are going to be all kinds of links to get in touch with Kirk, to get in touch with the organization, to find out what they're doing. And I highly encourage you to. And this would be a good episode to listen to with your children, to share with your children, to share it with school administrators, to learn more about the programs that Kirk and his organization and Stand with the Silent are doing. Again, all kinds of links will be below. And Kirk, we're going to go over to the green room. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody. I'm Dian Griesel. This is the Silver Disobedience Perception Dynamics podcast. And I've been sitting in Manhattan Center, and I encourage you to subscribe, and I really encourage you to get in touch with Stand with the Silent. Thank you.